Unfound is brought to you by its supporters at Patreon, PayPal, and YouTube, along with its gracious advertisers. Long before podcasting, before Facebook, before Reddit, before the Lifetime channel became murder mysteries all the time, there's been a website where people interested in crime could go to discuss, analyze, and even argue about the latest news. And it still dominates that arena. What is it? Websleuths. You get to learn all about it today. I'm Ed Denzel, and this is Unfound. Are you surprised? I hope you are. I tried to keep the topic of this episode a secret for as long as I could. That is a first for Unfound. Of course, I couldn't control the publicity that Websleuths itself might do for this episode. Me and Websleuths, we go back quite a ways, as will be discussed in the interview. I don't post there hardly at all now, just because, well, I have my own forum. But I occasionally go there when I want to find out more about recent disappearances, specifically when I'm working on the monthly Unfound Now series on YouTube. But back in the day, like when Jennifer Kessie went missing in 2006, I think that's when I got my first account. My fast typing turned out post after post, trying to figure out what happened to her. I had a habit of writing long, detailed explanations, trying to make sure I didn't leave anything out. Then in late 2009, when Stephen Kocher disappeared just a few miles from where I lived, I became kind of the go-to guy on his Websleuths thread to scope out that street where Stephen left his car. Yet, outside of those two disappearances, and right up until I started Unfound, I still spent a lot of time on there, discussing a variety of disappearances. No TV, no video games, no girlfriend, no kids, no dog, and a regular day job. Well, that all leaves a lot of time for Websleuths. Well, today you get to hear from the Websleuths owner, although she was not the creator of it. In fact, she bought it from someone else in 2004 and has run it with help from volunteer moderators ever since. Her name is Tricia Griffith. Unfound News. This coming Thursday, March 30th at 7 p.m. Eastern, please join me on Dr. Grace Telesco's show on the Fischler College of Education and School of Criminal Justice YouTube channel, as she and I analyze the resolution to the disappearance of Karen Moore from Davie, Florida. Next, the Unfound website is getting a makeover, or dare I say it, a facelift. I'm sending it the whole way to Sweden, not Beverly Hills, to get it done. I want to thank longtime listener and supporter Tobias, who has taken on this gargantuan task. Finally, this may be a good time for all of you to consider joining Patreon or becoming a member of Unfound's YouTube channel. Why? Because I'm starting a new monthly audio series in both locations. What is it? It's called Found. I will be researching and analyzing solved disappearances. The first one on my list, Brandon Lawson. Some of the other solved disappearances that will be featured during the course of 2023, Elizabeth Smart, J.C. Dugard, and, yes, the Titanic. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the owner of Websleuths.com, Tricia Griffith. Tricia, welcome to Unfound.
I am so glad to be here. I'm really looking forward to talking with you, and this is going to be great. It's going to be fun.
I'm very excited about this, and before we go any further, I have to thank my assistant, Cherie, who reached out to you. It was, I have to admit, it was her idea to have you on an episode, do an interview. Of course, everybody here at Unfound, we are huge fans of your website, and I know the listeners are huge fans of it as well, and I think they're very interested to hear, how it all got started. We realized, although you were not the creator of it, you are the owner now, and have owned it for many years, and we'll get into that. But I think everybody wants to know what it's like to own a very popular true crime forum, true crime website like that. So we're going to get into all of that in this conversation, but we're going to start here first. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Sure. First of all, Ed, please call me Tricia. That's what everybody calls me.
Okay, Tricia.
I answer to anything. I answer to hey you.
Okay.
Anything. I'm easygoing that way.
All right, Tricia.
Well, I was born in California. My goal in my whole life was to get back to a state that had the ocean, and I ended up in Utah my whole life, which is about as far away as you can get from the ocean. I got married very young. I just, had no idea what I was going to do with my life. Got married and went, gosh, I don't really even have an idea of what I want to be when I grow up. I was only 20, and I thought, I think I want to go into radio. That's as much thought as I put into it. So I joined one of those stupid schools called the Ron Bailey School of Broadcasting. Total ripoff, but I'll give it credit. Got me into radio. I started out on a little AM station doing hockey reports for the minor league hockey team.
Awesome.
And I just I worked my way up. I found out I loved it. I loved radio. I worked my way up. I went to a country station in the early 80s, and I thought, wow, I've hit the big time. I'm making $700 a month. God, could life get any better? And then I was just so thrilled. And then I got into rock radio, which was just what I loved. I worked at a great rock station in Salt Lake City called K-Bear in the late 80s. And then I joined the big one that would actually shape a lot of my life. And it was called Z93. It was a classic rock station, #1 rock station in Salt Lake. And in the meantime, I was married at the time, happily married, and everything was going great, normal. We were what we called dinks, double income, no kids. We could take off whenever we wanted, do whatever we wanted. Everything was going great. And then one day, and this was long before we had these big conglomerates owning, all the media. People owned 2 radio stations.
Yep.
Well, the owner came in, and he got mad at the guy who owned the country station in town. So he fired everybody and changed the format to country. Now, I was so unprepared for that. I mean, I literally had no skills to do another thing. Mm-hmm. And so my husband and I, we thought, we really weren't going to have kids, but hey, if I get pregnant, great. If I don't, that's great too. I mean, the words were hanging out of my mouth like a bubble in a cartoon, and I got pregnant. That's how quick it was.
Wow.
And yeah, this kid was meant to be born, I'm telling you. He was born in September of 1996, and for the first time in my life, Ed, I was home with nothing to do. Now, I'm not somebody that's like a great housekeeper, and I'm this wonderful organizer. No, I got to do something that I enjoy and I love. And I loved my baby. Oh my gosh, it was so wonderful. But in those first few months, all they do is eat, sleep, cry, poop, and pee. And you get no sleep and you become psychotic. Well, I was thinking, I've got to do something. I don't know what I can do. And right at that time, I saw this little newspaper article that said, 6-year-old beauty queen found dead in her basement. This was in December, and I thought, well, that's a misprint. There's no such thing as a 6-year-old beauty queen. And it was JonBenet Ramsey. And I found these discussion forums. about true crime because I was a big true crime fan, and we'll get into how I got into that.
Yeah, well, I want to go back. I want to go back a little to this radio stuff, if we can, for just a second before we get to JonBenet Ramsey, because of course I'm a podcaster. I have a microphone here that, of course, I've been doing this for over 6.5 years in true crime. I've done some other things. I have a performance background and everything. One of the things I want to know, when you worked at that rock station, did you use your regular name or did you have one of those whiz-bang radio names?
Oh, no, I use my regular name. I just Tricia Griffith. I couldn't think of anything more. But even in my radio time, I had a true crime incident. I became involved in this big hostage situation where a guy took all these hostages at the library and then called the radio station and said he's going to kill everybody if I didn't put him on the air. And that's a long story, and you can go, there's a big 2020 episode on it on YouTube. Ended up being this guy, he was a schizophrenic, listened to Z93, and he took all these hostages, and he had what's called a dead man switch on his hand, and it was a curling iron that he had taped open. Well, one of the hostages got himself taken hostage, and he was a deputy with the sheriff's department, and he was also a bomb expert. And he got himself taken hostage when this happened at the library, and he started looking, and he noticed that maybe, just maybe, the bomb wouldn't go off, but he wasn't sure. And anyway, again, we could do a whole other podcast.
Okay, what is that name? So I know people are going to want to look it up. What is the name of that? How would they look it up on YouTube to find it?
It's called, what's it called? It's In an Instant on it's by 2020. ABC's 2020. It's called In an Instant. And if they put in library hostage, they'll see it. Okay. And I think it's like a 2-hour program, and it explains everything. But the good news was, or the bad news, he had decided that he was going to start killing people because it was just taking too long, and he wasn't getting what he wanted. And what I had done is I had taken off all the regular programming, and I just played the songs he wanted. No commercials, nothing. And I was just playing to him for like 4 hours. Wow. And it was just a hostage standoff. He wouldn't talk to the police. He'd only talk to the radio station, And anyway, what happened was one of the hostages started to go into a diabetic coma, and he said, okay, we're going to draw straws or cut rope, and whoever gets the shortest rope goes first. Well, that's when the deputy, Lloyd Prescott, he knew he had to do something, so he jumped up and said, Sheriff's Department, and he started firing at him, and he jumped on him to take the bomb if it went off, and it didn't go off. Wow. Everybody was saved except for the hostage taker, but when they did detonate the bomb, it was serious. It had, all kinds of shrapnel, everything in there. And anyway, so I got off track there, but,
that was in Salt Lake City?
Yes, Salt Lake City.
What year, approximately?
1994, in fact, it was just 29 years ago, March 5th, 1994.
Wow, okay. And we're doing this interview on March 8th, 2023, so right. Oh, my goodness. But the way I understand it, though, is this is not thought, though, we can't go so quickly up into the 90s. You, though, earlier in your life, you had another true crime crossroads with one of the greatest known killers in American history. Why don't you tell the listeners about that when I think you were just a teenager?
I was a teenager in 1974. I had the hair parted down the middle, light brownish colored hair. I weighed 105 pounds, thought I was fat, the whole thing. And I was 15, and I was going to a place called Fashion Place Mall for the first time alone to buy my school clothes. And my brother, he took me in his car, which I thought was so cool because we got to listen to the radio, and he dropped me off at Sears. And you go into Sears, you walk in, you go through Sears to get into the whole mall. So I'm walking in Sears, money jingling in my pocket. And this guy comes up to me, and he's dressed in khakis. Now, I thought he was in the Army. They weren't green, but they were brown khakis. And he goes, hey, how you doing? And I look up, and oh, my God, he's just gorgeous smile. I'm boy crazy. And I'm like, I'm great. How are you? He goes, oh, I'm fine. we're walking along, and he goes, listen, I need to find CCMI, which was a local department store. And I said, well, that's not in this mall. It's in another mall. CCMI did end up in Fashion Place, but not then. I said, it's in a mall called Cottonwood Mall. And he goes, oh my gosh. He said, I'm lost. I'm new, blah, blah, blah. He said, listen, can you come with me and show me how to get there?
Wow.
Now, keep in mind, in 1974, we didn't have the term serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know anything like we do now.
Yeah.
But something, when he said that, nothing changed. He was smiling. He was calm. But when he said that, that scared me to death. And I put my head down and I said, no, I can't. And and I start walking faster. He's walking right with me. Our arms are touching. And he's like, oh, come on, just come out in the parking lot with me. Just come out to the parking lot with me and point me in the right direction. And I said, no, I can't. And right then, I look up, and there is my cousin, who's old enough to be my mother. I said, there's my mom. And I ran to her. I said, Jerry, there's this guy. And I turn around, and he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her there's this creepy guy. And anyway, I went to, they had a phone bank, pay phones. I called my brother. And I said, come get me. I don't want to be here. There's this guy. He scared me to death. And I want you to come get me. Well, my brother comes and gets me, and he's got this big hammer. And I said, what are you doing? He goes, let's go find. I probably can't swear, can I?
Please do not.
Okay. He said, I said, what are you doing with this hammer? And he goes, I want to go, beat the blank out of him. Let's go find this guy. I'll beat the crap out of him. I'm like, are you crazy? I said, he just scared me. He didn't do anything. My brother has an anger problem. And I said, my gosh, just calm down. Just take me home. Well, then girls had been disappearing around Salt Lake. The chief police daughter disappeared. And then this woman named Carol DeLonge was kidnapped from Fashion Place Mall, same mall I was a few weeks later. But she escaped. And they caught the guy, and the guy was Ted Bundy. Now, wow. I saw him on the news. I saw him on the news, Ed.
Yeah.
I didn't even register. He was scruffy looking. He looked fat. And I'm like, oh, God, I'm glad he got there. It was a big deal back then. Everybody was talking about it. I didn't even put two and two together. Well, a couple of years later, I'm looking at the Morning Salt Lake Tribune, and I saw all these pictures on the front page of these different men. And I'm looking at it, I said, oh my, Craig, that's the guy in Fashion Place. It was clean cut. And I looked, and the headline was something like The 7 Faces of Ted Bundy. And it talked about how he could change like a chameleon and look totally different. That was one of the problems they had in trying to catch him. And I just started freaking out because it was him. And of course, my brother goes, well, if you just let me go beat him up, I'm like, well, thanks for making me feel more guilty than I already do. Right. So I called. There was somebody in that article. I don't know if it was the district attorney or the police. I called somebody, and by this time he had already been convicted of kidnapping and sent to Boulder. And I called him and I said, look, I can place him there a few weeks before. And the guy said, well, why didn't you tell us before? And I said, God, I didn't recognize him. I said, I didn't recognize him until just now. And I told him the story, and he goes, yeah, that's our Ted. You're very lucky. Wow. And so then I became obsessed with true crime. I mean, just obsessed. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, back then we had nothing. We had, right. Vincent Bugliosi's story about about Charles Manson.
Yes. Yes.
That was it. Then Ann Rule wrote a book about Ted Bundy, which I just practically memorized. And then she started writing books in the 80s. And I would buy any true crime book I found. And then in the 90s, I mean, it was like the heavens opened up and the angels sang because there was Lifetime television for women. And it was all about stories about women murdering their husbands. And it was beautiful. And, I couldn't get enough of it. Right. And then in 1996, that's when I found the JonBenet Ramsey case. And I found the internet. And that's what really changed my life.
Let me ask you this, between you encountering Ted Bundy at that mall and him finally getting caught. How long was that?
It was only a few weeks. It wasn't very long.
Really quickly, huh?
Yeah. I think, and don't hold me to this, but I think I went shopping in September and they caught him in October.
Really close then.
Yeah, it was really close. And Carol DeRanche, she's a lucky woman. Now, he tried something different with her. He came out and he said he found her and he said he was an undercover cop and her car had been hit and he needed to show it to her. Mm-hmm. He got her in the parking lot and then he convinced her to get in his car. She did. She was able to escape, and that's how they caught him.
Yeah.
So she's really quite the hero. So yeah, it wasn't very long.
So it was near the end of his killing spree that you saw him, that you encountered him. Okay.
Right.
All right, very good. So way back there in the early 70s, you encountered Ted Bundy, and then years later, while you're a DJ at this radio station, you have this hostage situation in which you have to manage it, playing all this music for him until the situation could be handled. And then we can now come up to 1996, December of 1996, and the murder of JonBenet Ramsey, and that was another huge milestone for you.
Absolutely. And like I said, it changed my life. She was murdered on Christmas night or the day after Christmas, 1996. And that changed my life, because when I found that article, I went online to try and find something. Now, this was before Google, this was before anything like that. But I found a true crime discussion forum called Justice Watch. And these people were so smart. I didn't comprehend what they were doing. I mean, they would be discussing the case, and then somebody was able to go down to court and get documents and talk to people that knew the Ramseys, and it was unbelievable to me. And I would be getting up, and now I was glad to get up in the middle of the night constantly, because I would just check the forum constantly. Mm-hmm. And, I finally got my nerve up to make my first post. And everybody was really nice. But as what happens on the internet, it ended up blowing up and melting down because of all this drama. Yep. Let me just tell you, that's one thing I will not tolerate is drama on any forum that I own.
Yeah.
But it melted down because people were disagreeing, and people thought that, the neighbor Fleet White did it. And it was horrible. It was just horrible. It melted down. And then another forum was started called Forums for Justice. And it was started by a friend of mine. And then I took that over in 2003. And we did a lot of great work on the JonBenet Ramsey case. We really did. And again, that's a whole other podcast there, but we did some, when I say we, I'm really talking about the members. They did some amazing things. They were able to prove that the John Mark Carr debacle, the guy that they brought back.
Yep.
We were able to prove that the guy that found him and brought him to the district attorney, that, he was a scammer who had already accused another innocent man of being the killer of JonBenet, and he made a documentary about it that aired in Great Britain, and they wouldn't identify. This guy would not identify this man who supposedly killed JonBenet. All they would say is they called him Mr. X, and Mr. X had gone underground, and they couldn't find him. The investigators were looking for him. All of that was a lie. And one of the members in Scotland took a screen grab of the documentary where it showed his arrest record, this supposed Mr. X, his arrest record. His name was all blocked out, but his case number wasn't. So I looked it up. I found out his real name was Stephen Gigax. It took me 2 seconds to find him. He was making jewelry in Indiana. I just did a search of his name and I found him.
Wow.
And I called him and I said, did you know there's a documentary that's trying to be sold here in the U.S. that claims that you had something to do with JonBenet? And he's like, what? And the DA's office, I talked to them and they said, no, we're not investigating Gigax. He was able to prove he wasn't anywhere. He was out of state when JonBenet was killed. But this same guy is the guy that found John Mark Carr. This guy's name was Professor Michael Tracy, and he taught, get this, journalism ethics at the University of Colorado. It was ridiculous.
That's beautiful.
He found John Mark Carr, fed him all this information, got the crazy DA at the time, her name was Mary Lacey, to believe that this was the killer. I don't know if you remember, they held this big press conference.
Yep. I've talked about John Mark Carr in relation to a case that I was in the middle of, the murder of Janelle Matthews, with the trial of Steve Pankey, coincidentally also in Colorado, where I at times have compared Steve Pankey to John Mark Carr, somebody who says they know something about a murder but really don't. Something like right. Yes. So I know John Mark Carr has come up on the podcast before. Yes.
So you know about him. Well, Anyway, they said, we're going to run his DNA. And I said, the DNA won't match. By the way, the DNA is a total red herring, but we don't, again, another podcast.
Yeah, we're not here to get into JonBenet Ramsey. All we're trying to establish is this is kind of the lead up, really, to you becoming the owner of Websleuths. But you got really, really deep. But even doing that with this Justice Watch, and I guess what you're also saying is from the early days of the internet, there have been trolls and everything else, right? This isn't this isn't a 21st century thing. This is a human internet thing.
Human internet thing, and it has been massive. So anyway, that all happened, and we got a lot of publicity after we exposed Michael Tracy, and thank God the documentary is never played in the U.S. But that's when the owner of Websleuths.com called me. Now, she actually was not the original owner either. I think it was created either in 1998 or 99.
Okay.
And it was owned by 3 other women. And somehow she got it. And she called me. She says, you don't know me, but I like the way that you run forumsforjustice.org. I'd like to give you Websleuths. And I knew of Websleuths. I was actually a member, but I didn't use it very much.
Okay.
And I said, no, I want to buy it. I don't want you to give it to me. And so I bought it, and it was really small. I think there was about 250 members. It was nothing but drama. It was, oh my God. I went on there, and it's like, I know where you live. I'm going to sue you. You better watch out. They're supposed to be discussing true crime.
Yeah.
And it was just, they were threatening each other. But they did have a couple of good forums. One was Lacey Peterson, the other one was JonBenet. And so I thought, well, this has potential, Now, Ed, there's no book on how to run a true crime discussion forum. Yeah. I had no idea what I was doing. And I trusted people because I needed their help. I needed the moderators' help. I didn't know anything. And, one of the moderators, who made him an administrator, he went by the name of Make Toast. And he was, oh my gosh, he was so helpful to me, Ed. He was just, showing me the ropes and being just a doll. And then I started getting these anonymous emails. We all hate you. We want you out. We have a private petition demanding that you get rid of Websleuths. Nobody wants you here. We're going to make your life miserable. Well, fortunately, somebody told me at the time how you could figure. I didn't know what an IP address was. I had no idea. Well, somebody showed me how to check the IP address on the email against the IP addresses in Websleuths. And I did, and it turned out to be this Make Toast guy.
So the guy who was pretending to help you and everything else was stabbing you in the back behind the scenes.
And he was getting a big crowd of people to help him. And I was even talking about it now, I'm just shocked.
It hurts.
I can't believe, it's like, why would you do that? And it just got worse, I mean, first thing I did when I got there was I banned a bunch of people because they were troublemakers. And the constant lawsuit threats, which I still get to this day. Mm-hmm. And, you're denying me my rights, and we're going to sue you, blah, blah, blah. And so for like several years, tried to manage it, and I tried to be everybody's friend. I let everybody, put links up to their businesses, and I didn't even ask the moderators their real names, and was just trying to be nice to everybody, which is the biggest mistake. And then I found out that all these banned people had started this other forum and they were plotting to take me down. And the one that was organizing it was the other person that I put in charge, like I made an administrator. And she was going over there, and they were posting things like, okay, you go to this thread and do this, and that will make all the moderators go here. I'll go to this thread and post this, and then it'll be total chaos. Let's just keep doing this. And it'll wear Tricia down, and she'll get rid of Websleuths. And I'm reading this, and these people I thought were my friends that were helping organize this big thing. And I'm like, my God, what is wrong with these? I just want to have a discussion about true crime cases. Why do you want to tear me apart? And it doesn't help the victims. Because one thing, Ed, that I found out, working on forumsforjustice.org especially, was there are a lot of people out there that think they don't matter, that don't have anybody, and they're stuck inside, and they think their opinion doesn't count. Yeah. And one thing I wanted to do was to let those people know that we needed them, and they meant something,
right?
And we wanted them on Websleuths.
Absolutely.
And then there were families of them missing that had nowhere to go, and I wanted them to know that Websleuths is here for them. But you had all this drama going on.
Of course, you've been doing this for over 20 years now. And very quickly, how do you look back at those people now? What do you think was really going on there? Now that you've been doing this for a while, you're very experienced in running the forum and having good moderators and everything. How do you look back at that time now? What was the motivation of these people? And, how do you look at it now?
Well, I look at it, and I do think about it a lot, actually. And I look at it and I think, we didn't know what we were doing. They didn't know what they were doing. And everybody just wanted to have Websleuths and make it their own because their opinion was the only one that mattered. It was a very immature, it was the dawning of the immature troll. Yeah. It was, the dawn of the acting like you're in junior high. Yep. And you can be a bully, but nobody can identify you. Yes. And what I realized is it gave a lot of people that never had power, it gave them power. Yeah. They could hurt somebody. They could do something. And I look back on that and I just think, I can't believe all that stuff happened. And I'm not trying to make myself out to be a victim. I'm not at all. Because I had so many good people helping me. And without the good moderators, especially the ones now, Websleuths wouldn't be here. Right. Without the good people. Right. So it was shocking.
Yeah. So when you take this over, you said there was only like 250 users. There were a couple good threads there. I think you said JonBenet Ramsey. I think you said Lacey Peterson. I know everybody remembers those names. Did you take it over with the goal of once again, like a business, spreading the influence, gaining more members, or was this, like people think about, when they, start their own business, or am I going to franchise this thing out if it gets really successful? Were you really thinking about this as a business? Like, I got to get to 1,000 members, then 10,000, then 100,000, or was your thinking something different?
You give me way too much credit. I had no thinking.
Well, okay.
I had no thought of this being ever a business because I was just paying the bills out of my pocket. I had no thought of making it any bigger. I just wanted to make it so it was smoother so people could join. And like I said, the ones that felt like they didn't matter and the families, that we could do something good. I really did want to do something good with it. And that's how I looked at it. It was never supposed to be a business.
Okay.
Ever. I'm not a business person at all.
Right.
But I knew we had to, increase membership to make it work. So that's the one thing I did know. So in 2008, I bought it in 2004. In 2008, we kept tightening the rules more and more. But in 2008, we just really tightened them.
I remember.
To the point where, a lot of people left. They were mad because we wouldn't allow rumors. We wouldn't allow people to be rude. They couldn't say, that's a stupid idea. They could disagree, but they couldn't insult. And we really changed things. And we did have a lot of people leave.
Yep.
And I thought, oh my God, I made a mistake. Because again, I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
But then had something incredible happen. All of these people started slowly coming out of the woodwork and saying, now I can post without worrying about being bullied. Thank you.
Yes.
And it exploded.
Yeah.
And then Casey Anthony happened. So that was, the two things. It was a two-pronged deal. That's what made Websleuths explode, was when we tightened the rules, and the rules are still fluid to this day. And then a huge case like that, and it was incredible. It was so much fun to be a part of, and it was my first experience really with dealing with somebody really, really close to the case. It was Cindy's mother, and what happened was I got an email, and it said, "You don't know me, but here is Cindy Anthony's password to her Yahoo account. You can log in and read all her emails." And I went, oh, I'm not going to do that. So I found a way I contacted Cindy Anthony. I said, "You don't know me, but here's the email. Turn it over to the police. Give me a call, whatever." I said, "I'm not going to do it." Well, she called me. And she was very pleasant. But Ed, it was so weird. After the phone call, I knew why Cindy or Casey was the way she was. She went on and on about, first of all, she said she'd never heard of Websleuths. We found out later she had reams of printed out pages of the discussion forum found in her house, just reams. And but what she was doing was she was politely threatening me and saying, I have a lawyer, and I'm going to shut down the people that are calling Casey names. And I said, "What?" And she said, "I'm going to get those places that call Casey names. I am going to get them shut down, and it will happen." And she was very adamant about it. And I tried to be as gentle as I could. And what my idea was to say, "Are you crazy? You want to stop the First Amendment? People can call Casey Anthony names. She's a public figure, And I said, on our forum, Cindy, we don't allow people to call anybody any names, but we do allow them to speculate whether they murdered their daughter or not." And she said, "Well, I'm going to get all of these places shut down." And I said, "Please do not give any lawyer any money." I said, "That will not happen."
Right.
She was adamant that's what she was going to do, but.
And what year was that? I know the listeners going to be like, "You don't know what year that was." What year was the Casey Anthony saga?
Well, the case started, I believe, in 2008.
Okay. And
it was sometime after that, and long before Casey went to trial, that I talked to Cindy. I don't know what year it was.
I do have to follow up with this. So who was it that emailed you the password to her email then? Was it her trying to entrap you, or what was that?
Oh, I have no idea. I just sent it along to her. I like I said, I didn't try it. Maybe she was trying to entrap me.
I think that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, but I just can't. I was just stunned that anybody would think that I would want that and that I would do something like that,
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was crazy. And that's when the forum really took off. It really did. As with everything.
Yeah, I told you in our previous conversation setting up this official interview that I came to Websleuths. So you bought it in 2004. I am pretty sure that I first signed up to be a member on Websleuths in 2005, and it had to do with the Jennifer Kessie disappearance. I'm pretty sure.
Right.
That's what brought me to Websleuths, but I think also what drew me to Websleuths is a disappearance that we've covered on Unfound. And in fact, I've gotten to know some people who know the disappearance as well as everybody since I started Unfound. But Jody Husentrut, the disappearance of the reporter in Iowa from 1995. Yeah, those were the two disappearances that I think drew me to Websleuths, to becoming a member. And I know back then, really then and then later when Steven Kocher went missing in Las Vegas, and I lived not too far away from where he went missing, that was another one that, I mean, I was spending, I had some time on my hands back at that time. I was spending
Right.
hours on Websleuths. Like, he went missing in 2000, so 2009 into 2010. I mean, just
Uh-huh.
crazy amount of hours on your forum, and and I will be honest, my memory is good enough. I could tell the change. I could see the changes that, of course, I didn't know what was necessarily going on behind the scenes, but between like 2005 and 2009, 2010, there was a distinct difference. It was more orderly, more, more
Right.
community based, nicer conversations, things like that. There certainly was a change. I remember that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm because that makes me feel good that it was noticeable because it
Mm-hmm.
was meant to be noticeable. And like I said, it still continues to this day. The
Yeah.
changing and the and the trying to make everybody happy, but have them stick to the rules. And I'm thrilled that you were a member and are a member
Uh-huh.
for so long. That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I actually went and looked the account that I have now, and I think the reason that the account that I have now got started in 2014. But like I said,
Hmm.
I know that my first account was on there in like 2005. But I think what happened was that after I moved, I got a new email address and all these things, so I just decided to get a new account. But I'm sure,
Right.
but
A lot of
I
people do
think
that.
I
Yeah.
think if I really, 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 really jumped into that, I could find my original count from like back in 2005, something like that. But
Right.
yeah, it brings me back to the days before I was a professional doing this, when I was just an amateur, like the listeners are, most of the listeners who are listening to us right now, and of course for you too. You at one time were just a reader, a listener of true crime, and now you're in the
Sure.
middle of it as well. How did you deal with that change? Going from the outside, I guess, to the inside. How did you deal with that?
I I loved it, because I felt like I was in the middle of something really cool. And I want to stress again,
Mm-hmm.
it's the members that do all the great work.
Yeah.
I am not. I wouldn't call myself a great sleuth or anything, but it's the members that do so much and are so good. And I loved I still love every minute of it. I
Mm-hmm.
really do, and I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky that I'm a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cool thing that people will look back on and say, "Hey, this happened at the beginning of the internet. Look at what they used to do."
Mm-hmm.
And here's a forum that hopefully people will say made a difference. So
Yeah.
I love it. It makes me very happy.
Yeah. When you started, of course, you got it in 2004, and it sounds to me that there might have been a time that it took a while to maybe get comfortable doing it, and trying to figure out some of these things. When did that comfort set in for you, or did you? I mean,
Wow,
I'm
that's
guessing when you started, you had butterflies and worrying about this, worrying about that. Of course, you had people that were trying to take you down, but when did the
right.
comfort level finally get, hey, I think I maybe know what I'm trying to do here, and things are the way I want?
Well, I'll tell you when that happened. I can pretty much tell you that it happened in 2015
Wow, that long.
because
That long.
along
Wow.
and yeah, well, because first of all, I have to add advertising because
Mm-hmm.
radio went away, disc jockeys went away, and everything was pre-recorded, and there weren't any jobs,
Yeah.
and so I had to add advertising. My server bill at that time was $250, and I thought, that was like a million. I didn't
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah.
It's literally 10 times that now, but it I it
Mm-hmm.
was difficult because, like I said, I didn't know anything. I didn't know about numbers and Google stats, and I didn't know about the laws, and I didn't have any money to hire anybody to help me,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm still struggling with that. But in 2011, I took on a partner who a wonderful lady that I thought I knew at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and she was a businesswoman. Her husband was a lawyer, and she became a partner, 50-50. And I'm going to make this really quick.
Okay.
What she did was behind my back, she started telling the mods that I was stealing And then every day we'd talk, and she'd say, listen, I'll do everything on the forum. At the time I was doing something on Blog Talk Radio. And she said, you just worry about your Blog Talk Radio show. I'll take care of the mods. I mean, she was very good. And she was supposed to show me how to run a business. That was the whole point. Well, she started telling the mods that I was stealing money. Now, this is interesting because she and I had access to the same bank account. And we had an agreement. The agreement was I would take out X amount per month because that's how I made my living. And she, in the meantime, would pay, because I needed somebody that had money, would pay somebody to fix the advertising because we should have been making a lot more money than we were. And I didn't know how to fix it. So she was going to pay somebody to do it. And then what would happen was when the advertising started to kick in, then she'd start taking her percentage and it would even out. And then we'd have a wonderful business and she'd make money and I'd make money and we'd still be able to do good things. Well, she started telling people that I, like I said, was stealing. I didn't know any of this.
Wow.
And not suddenly, but gradually, the mods started being just awful to me. In fact, one of the mods was my co-host, and she just quit co-hosting and wouldn't tell me why. And this woman told the moderators, that she had 8 signed and sealed affidavits from members who said I was harassing them for money, and they left the forum. And so, now remember, her husband was a lawyer. So she filed a lawsuit against me. Now, in this lawsuit, she demanded I just turn over everything to her. And my lawyer read it, and he's like, I don't even know what she's trying to say here. She said, it looks like a paralegal wrote this. Well, we found out later when one of the mods actually switched sides and gave us the emails that she should have turned over in discovery. And in the email, she said, Tricia has no money. I have these 8 affidavits, and she's been stealing, and the people at Chase Bank, they want to catch her too. And she has no money. So I'm going to file the lawsuit because it won't cost me anything because my husband's a lawyer. Tricia can't fight it because she has no money. So she'll just fold, and I'll get Websleuths, and then we'll save Websleuths. Well, the day that I finally confronted the mods, I said, why are you guys so mean to me? And they said, you know what you've been doing. And I'm like, what? And yeah, she called up Mark Klass. You know Mark Klass?
Yeah, I don't know him personally, but of course I know who he is, of course, yes.
He's a good friend of mine. She called up his right-hand man and said, you need to cut ties with Tricia because she's about to be arrested for embezzlement. And he's like, what? He told Mark. Mark called me and said, I stand behind you 100%. I know this is ridiculous. And again, what's so ridiculous, Ed, is we weren't making any money. I didn't even take out what she agreed I could take out, what we agreed I could take out, because we didn't make that much. She wrote up the contract. Well, I had a dear friend who was a former nun, and she left the convent and became a nurse. And I went to live with her to help her. She had broken her ankle. And she told, I'm going to start bawling. And this happened. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have any money to hire a lawyer. And she said, I've saved all this money all my life. And I kept asking God, what am I supposed to do? And she said, I'll help you. And she paid for almost all of the attorney's fees. Another wonderful man helped me pay as well, a little bit of it. And we were able to hire the best, incredible internet libel lawyers in the U.S. And they looked at this case. And what they do is they choose a case. They didn't have to take cases because they were so successful. They looked at this case and they said, we're taking this one. This is ridiculous what this woman's doing to you. So when she had to give her deposition, she was so upset. It's like, where's Tricia? And again, in the emails, where's she getting this money? How could she be getting this money? Why do all the good things happen to her? Well, her deposition was 45 minutes. And in it, she just finally kept saying, I don't know. When they ask her a question, they'd say, did you sign this contract that gives Tricia permission to take out X amount of dollars? I don't know. So you told everybody she was stealing, but yet here's your signature. and you did the taxes. What is she stealing? I don't know. And it was 45 minutes, and they finally gave up because that's all she'd say. Anyway, long story short, we ended up settling because we were actually going to trial. And I was packing my bags. I couldn't wait. To get her on the stand. She had no witnesses. She had no exhibits. I had witnesses and exhibits. And my lawyer said, now, if you win, you'll still have to work with her. And I said, yeah, but if I win a judgment, I'll just tell her I'll forego the judgment. Just give me back Websleuths. And she goes, yeah. And she doesn't have to. She said, now, we can get her off because of malfeasance or whatever. She said, but it'll cost another $100,000. I'm like, I don't have that. My friend doesn't have that. So anyway, we ended up settling. She gave me her, gave me back Websleuths. Part of the settlement was I can talk about the lawsuit and tell what happened. There's no, other than the actual settlement amount, I can tell what happened because I needed to clear my name.
Yeah.
Right. And so after that, and let me tell you, that absolutely traumatized me. It still does to this day. That changed who I was to have all these, and, finally other people started seeing it and seeing that she didn't have 8 affidavits signed and sealed. She had no affidavits because it was all a lie. And so if you look at the lawsuit online, oh my gosh, what she's accusing me of, it looks horrible. But when you get in it, you see that she's made it all up. So anyway, 2015, when I got Websleuths back, that's when I felt, okay, I've been through this. I can do this. I can do this. And I started not second-guessing myself all the time. I started trying to work harder. And I still have a long way to go, believe me. But it was 2015. That experience made me stronger. And it made me more confident to run Websleuths. Again, I still have a lot to learn. And I make mistakes all the time. But I'm doing the best I can, and I hope people enjoy it. And we have the best moderating team, and I am so fortunate, Ed. I am so lucky to have these people in my life.
Do you, I will say, I've been doing this, you've been doing this for a lot longer than I have, but I've been doing this for 6.5 years, and, I'm very, very fortunate who have assistants or who've had assistants. I've had assistants who have been spectacular, spectacular people that I really trust. They give me good advice, and I think I've gotten to really know them and everything. But I will tell you, though, on the other hand, true crime does tend to bring out a lot of people who are the opposite of that. A lot of kooks. We know that, I know many of my guests have stories about con artists and things. And, being that you've encountered this, you had, people stabbing you in the back at the beginning. You have this business person who comes in and tries like a hostile takeover. Is that something you equate with like the true crime community, or is there something bigger going on there? How do you think about it?
That's a very interesting question, and I've never thought about it. I guess to think about it, I would assume this is human nature. You're always going to find people that you trust that are untrustworthy, and it's up to you not to let this happen. I'm not saying, oh, these people attacked me and I had no part in it. I absolutely did, because I let them in my life. And I saw red flags and I chose to ignore them because I didn't want to believe it. I don't think it's just the true crime community. I think because of the internet and because people can remain anonymous and because the internet gives people power, that changes people. Yep. And you've seen it happen. You've seen the overwhelming change in society since the internet. And I think way ahead in the future, they're going to look back at this time as like the wild, wild west. Yeah. And my gosh, how did we let all this stuff go on? Everybody, if you're on the internet, whether you have a business or not, you need to be very careful about who you let in your life. Yeah. And you need to really examine yourself. If you're letting people in your life that are constantly stabbing you in the back, you got to take some responsibility for that too, And Don't get involved with the drama. And that's one thing I want to stress, Ed, and I think this is good advice for everybody.
Yes.
Do not get involved with the drama.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. The topic is, whatever, the crime. That's what you talk about. I don't care that you think somebody offended you. Get over it. If you're going to not follow our rules, we're going to kick you out. End of story. Here's the topic. I don't care that you feel you have been mistreated, okay? If you're not obeying the rules and we kick you out and you think we're mistreating you, oh well. Don't get involved with the drama. Walk away from it. Don't feel like you have to have the last word. That's the toughest lesson to learn.
I know.
Because, I know I'm right. I just need to say this and say
right.
No.
If I could just find it's that Seinfeld episode where George Costanza's trying to think about the perfect comeback when some guy makes fun of him. And he goes back, well, they're right, the jerk store joke. And then he ends up saying, I slept with your wife, and the guy's telling him, George, his wife's in a coma. It's that type of thing, not being able to walk away, just say, you know what, this has gone far enough, it just looking for those perfect words to really put somebody else down. I got it. Let's move on to this. Let's just talk about the everyday workings of Websleuths. Like, for example, of course we know, you've already mentioned Lacey Peterson and JonBenet Ramsey, but how does a thread become a thread on Websleuths? There's somebody, for example, in my business, the work that I do for disappearances. John Smith goes missing in Las Vegas, Nevada. How does that thread get started? Do your moderators check in to make sure it's actually for real? How does that all work?
Well, we're very lucky again. It is always started by a member. Okay, and our members are great. They know the rules. We have to have a mainstream media story about whatever they're posting about. If it's a missing person, we need a police report showing that they're missing. Okay, so nobody can just come on and start talking about a story unless it's already been talked about or it already has a case filed, with the police department. And so I can't remember the last time we had to take down a thread because it wasn't legitimate. It's just, it's, again, very, very lucky. And our members know our rules, and we have this button that says, I think it says report. And so if a post violates the rules, they just hit report. They type in a one sentence why it violates the rules. It goes to the moderator forum, and they look at it and decide what to do with it. It's really a great system. And so it's every day, something new happens on Websleuths. And it's not always true crime. We have a great COVID forum that we started, and we have a weather forum to help people, follow the bad weather. And so it's a community. It's a great community. And we do get people causing problems, believe me. That does happen all the time, but our mods are really good at handling it. And, we do get threats. I just got a threat today about somebody who's going to ruin me because of something that was in a newspaper article that was posted on our forum. Well, that's not go after the newspaper, not Websleuths.
Right.
It's a really good system that we have so far. And again, it would not work without our wonderful moderators.
Well, you keep bringing them up. So how many moderators does Websleuths have, and how do those people get to be moderators?
Well, we actually have a very small staff, and we are always looking for moderators. I think we have about 4 moderators, and two of them, or one of them is an administrator, meaning they just have more powers. And then we have what are called 2 forum coordinators, and they're the ones that move the threads when they need to be moved to, a found person who's been missing and things like that. But we are always looking for moderators. And what we do is we look at our members and we approach them and ask them if they want to be a moderator. Because we like the way they reported things. We like the way they post. And sometimes, a lot of times, it doesn't work out. They get on there. They don't enjoy it. They get upset. They take things personally. Or they get power hungry and start banning people and closing threads. And, It's like, no, you got to have somebody that is calm and has common sense and isn't out to be right all the time. Again, I go to let them have the last word. It's not worth it. And you got to make sure that, hey, if it is a toss-up, should this post remain? It's right down the line there. If it's close, give it to the poster. Leave it up there if it's close. Don't take it down. You have to have somebody that knows how to judge that. It is very difficult, but it can be very rewarding as well. So we're always looking for good moderators. They're all volunteer, and I can't say enough about them. Just love them.
Do they work out their own shifts, or how does that? Being that they're volunteers, do they all get together and, well, I'll cover these shifts and you'll cover this? I mean, of course, as we know, I mean, Websleuths is all over the world, so this is a 24/7 operation. So how do you find people to moderate at like 3 a.m. on the East Coast of the United States?
Well, sometimes we don't. And what the mods do is my instructions to them are, whatever time you can give to Websleuths is greatly appreciated. And what happens is it usually ends up working great because one person likes to stay up late. Maybe somebody lives in another country where the time zone is totally flipped, or somebody likes to get up in the morning really early and come in like that, and it all seems to work out. But it took a long time to get that way. I'm going to knock on wood when I say this. This is the smoothest Websleuths has ever run, and
good.
I'm just thrilled with it. And they just work it out amongst themselves. It's great.
And so, being that you have these moderators, being you are the owner, what is your daily routine regarding Websleuths?
Well, daily routine is I answer a lot of emails. And there are many times where I'll get emails that involves going into the back end, of the forum. And you can't let everybody have that access because they could wipe it out.
Yeah.
And so, there's something that needs to be fixed. And again, that happens a lot. Somebody's password isn't working, or they need to change their username for whatever. I'll get those emails. I'll go and do that. I'll check in with my administrator, and then I'll work on Facebook messages or Twitter messages. And then I do a lot of work on the YouTube channel. And then I go in when extra help is needed. It runs that smoothly now. Where before I had to be on the forum a lot. And now it just, I'm going to knock on wood, I don't want to jinx myself. It's just running so smoothly that I can put a lot of time into the YouTube channel, and communicating with the members. So I couldn't ask for anything better. I work a lot, and I get overwhelmed with emails and messages. I just sometimes get so overwhelmed I can't keep up. But that's okay. I'll do the best I can and help as many people as I can with whatever. The stuff that I do is really more mundane because I want the mods to do, the important stuff.
Right.
And I want to keep all this stuff away from them so they don't have to worry about it.
Right. I think everybody, I know when you told me the first and only time we talked before this, that there were only 4 moderators or whatever you have so many threads going on at one time that only have 4 moderators. It does sound like you would need more, but it's because how many users, I think you told me this, but how many users do you have on Websleuths at any one time?
It's, that all depends on the case, but let me tell you why it's easier today with 4 moderators than it was maybe 15 years ago with 10 moderators, because the members that we have know the rules. They know the rules, and a lot of times they'll police the thread themselves. They'll say, hey, you can't say that, you're new, blah, 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 and they'll help the other members. So that's how, it's draining. And believe me, like I said, we could always use more. But because Websleuths has been established for so long, and the rules have been established for a long time, people know them. They really know them, and that really makes a ton of difference. But as far as how many people are on, it all depends. You have something like a Gabby Petito case. I had to buy another server to accommodate all of those people. We have over 200,000 members, but the vast majority of them are not using the forum anymore. So it can be anywhere from, it's usually 5 times whatever members are on, then 5 times that's the number of visitors. So let's say we have 1,000 members on, we'll have around 5,000 visitors on reading. Most of our traffic is from visitors reading, because they come there because it's interesting and fun. It just all depends. Again, it depends on the day. Like today was a really slow day. We had, I don't know, like I looked and there was like, 800, maybe 1,000 people on it, 1,000, maybe 1,200 combo people and members. And that's a really slow day. But the Alex Murdaugh trial is over.
That's right.
And
I was just going to bring it up.
It was ranking up,
Yeah.
So it just all depends.
Okay. I asked you this before, and I have to ask you again because the answer really surprised me. Is you bought it in 2004. Of course, smartphones kind of started in like 2007, and what you told me is, that really didn't affect Websleuths that much at all. And in fact, here we are in 2023, and there isn't even an application like in the Google Store anywhere for Websleuths, right? Hasn't affected what you do that much, right?
That's right. And because, I'll tell you, there's a reason for that. The software that we have now is supposed to work just as well with a smartphone as with a laptop or a desktop. So if you have your cell phone and you go on Websleuths, which I think is like 40% of the people use their smartphones to go on Websleuths, you'll see the same things that you would if you were on a desktop or a laptop. Now, I'd love to have an application, but I checked into that actually a long time ago.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the cost to build an application, about had a heart attack. So believe me, there are so many things I would like to upgrade on Websleuths and make it not be so clunky and make it easier. But it's just impossible, right? For right now. I shouldn't say impossible. It's not doable right now. I hope someday soon it will be.
Okay. Let's move on to this. And of course, you stated early on that when you got it in 2004, there were 250 users. You just used the number recently that you have over 200,000, although some of them don't go there anymore for whatever reason. Maybe they check in once a year or something. But is growth something that is actually on your mind? Do you track the numbers or not? What is in you? Do you think about, 10 years from now, I want to have this many users? Do you even think about that?
Well, I do. I think about growth. I want it to grow. That's the whole point, is to get it bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But the problem is it's just going to be organic, because I don't have a social media person that can get out there and, tweet all the time and have a TikTok account and all of that. I do it myself, and it's actually a pathetic attempt just because I'm busy with everything else. So it will always be organic, and the things we have going for us, again, are the rules, and the people posting know they're not going to be attacked, and we have a lot of media come here to get information. We have a lot of law enforcement come here. So the growth will be organic until one day I win the lottery or whatever happens, where I can hire a social media director who can, go gonzo on my social media account. That would be huge. I would love that. But for right now, this is what we can do with what we have. And it could be a lot better, but boy, it could be a lot worse too.
All right. So when you say you market the site, it's really just doing those, like, I guess we would call them free things. Like you said, Facebook site, Twitter, and things like that. You don't actually have a marketing company or anything like that.
Oh God, I wish. I wish.
Yeah, me too.
That would be so nice.
Okay.
But I just don't have the money. I wish I did. Which is surprising that we got as big as we did without having any of that. And again, that's a testament to our members and to our moderators. Absolutely.
But you do have advertising on the website. I mean, I would think,
Yes.
I'm not here to everybody knows that I'm not the greatest business person either, but you do have ads on the site. Obviously, you get a lot of people going to the site. How has that been? Of course, I'd never ask you for numbers, but dollar signs or anything like that. But it can't be
Right.
too bad.
Well, here's the thing. It all depends on how many people visit the site. Now, the one person I do pay is my IT guy, and he's great. He handles all the problems, and he also handles the advertising. And that all depends on how many people are on the site, how many people see those ads. You know how that goes.
Right.
And, there'll be months where I literally will personally not make a dime. The server and what I have to pay my IT guy is eaten up by, that month, that's all I earned.
Wow.
And then there'll be other times where I've earned more, and I might, have $1,000, which is like, wow, that's pretty big. So I have other streams of ways to make money.
Yeah.
Because I can't rely on Websleuths. And I know people look at it and go, God, there's a lot of ads on there. But you got to remember, you got to have millions and millions and millions of impressions to make, good money. And sometimes we do. If there's a big case, it's huge. And again, if I had a social media person and I had somebody that could redesign it, we'd make a lot of money. But we're going along. This is the best we can do with what we have at the moment.
Yeah. I guess what we're showing in this interview is that even though Websleuths is easily, the biggest true crime forum in the world, it's very grassroots. It's you cover. Of course, there are disappearances and murders from other countries, not the United States, on there. It covers that you can log into Websleuths from pretty much any country in the world except maybe North Korea and a couple other places. But it's still at its core, it's very grassroots.
Absolutely, it is. That's all it is grassroots. And again, give kudos to the members for bringing the cases and putting them up and discussing them. It's fantastic. It really is. And I wish I didn't have to run advertising. If I could make money and not have to worry about paying, if I could make enough money to pay the bills on Websleuths and not worry about, making any more money off Websleuths, I'd take all the advertising off. I would love to do that. But yeah, it's just totally grassroots. It's just me. People think it's a big corporation, and it's me.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gotten calls like at 2 a.m. because people think they found my number and they think that, we're up all night and we have a staff, and it's me. I'm the staff. That's it.
Yeah.
So it is really, it's run by volunteers. It's small, but it's big. And it's popular.
It is, for sure.
It's all over the world. And like I said, I can look on Websleuths and I can see IP addresses from law enforcement from every part of the world reading about their cases. I'm assuming their cases. Again, media comes there a lot to get a feel for what's hot and what's not.
And for
so
sure.
I'm very proud of it. These people have done an amazing job.
Of course. Okay. Let's move on to this. Of course, you got started owning Websleuths well before the dawn of true crime podcasting, which is what I do. How did you view that? It kind of started with Serial, I'm going to guess 2012, 2013. Being, running a forum. How did you view that? Could you have expected that? Did you see that coming? When you first heard of the word Serial, did it register that it was going to be such a big thing, that it was going to be so interlocked with what you do? How did you look at that?
Let me tell you what happened. I started a little, I called it radio because the word podcast and serial hadn't been invented yet. And it was on a place called Blog Talk.
Yeah.
And it was called Blog Talk Radio. And I do a radio show sometimes every night. I had no idea that it would be, if I'd have known that, I would have just hung on to that and gone with it, because I was, one of the first ones doing it. And I had big guests on and everything. And then, things in my life happened. I had to stop it for a while, and, started it up and then had to stop it. And I had no idea. Had I known, I would have grabbed that brass ring and hung on to it, but I just didn't see it. I didn't see how big that would become.
Mm.
And, I can still do it. It's going to take a lot of work, and I'm working on it now. But, I'm trying to get my YouTube channel just up and running, and hopefully going viral, and having a place for people to come and talk about true crime in a live setting, and talk to guests and everything. But yeah, looking back on that, I just shake my head and go, oh my God, if only I had known. If only I had known.
When did you have this show on Blog Talk Radio? I am familiar with Blog Talk Radio. I know what it is. When were you on there?
And please don't hold me to these dates. I'm going to say sometime between 2009, 2010, or 2011, right around in there.
Okay.
Is when it started. I actually hired this company. I think it was called LA Radio. And what they did, for $100 a show, they would handle the phones for you, take callers and everything. And so the first show I did, we crashed their servers. We had so many people. And we couldn't do the show. So I told the guy, I said, look, you got to do something. And he's going, well, we didn't expect all these people. And I said, well, it's popular. So I tried it like 2 more times, and every time I did it, it crashed. And that's when I went to Blog Talk, and it was fun. It was, really cool. You earned a little money, not a lot. But again, I just didn't see it. Did not see that one coming.
Yeah, and now true crime podcasting. Of course, it's so huge, and I've people. I don't know if they believe me when I say this or not, but when I started Unfound, and of course I was part. People know that I was part of another true crime podcast for a few months before I started Unfound, but in both situations, I had no idea how big the true crime podcasting community was and everything until after I started Unfound. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking, but, I was certainly familiar with Websleuths, but also I think the members also know, which I think they think I'm all crazy. I've never listened to one episode of Serial, ever.
Oh, really?
Never have. It's it's just like I said, I tend to be in my own little world here in Florida.
Oh, I get that. I do.
But I'm sure that you were I guess what I would say is Websleuths was kind of the forerunner, that kind of set everything up, kind of put it into the consciousness of the United States and the world that true crime, you can come online and read about it and everything. Kind of blazed this trail for true podcasting to kind of the technology finally caught up with everybody's interests. So
thank you.
I think
appreciate
so.
That. I hope Websleuths was a part of that. I would like to
sure.
think that. So, and that's wonderful. And then again, it makes me feel really good because I do want to accomplish something, and I want to help, and I want to make a difference. And some days I'm better at it than other days, that's for sure. But I couldn't do it without all the help. I don't want to get the impression that I'm doing this all alone. No. Got some great people helping me and backing me. I don't know where we're going to be like in 5 years, but I am excited. I think it's going to, in fact, I know it's going to be good. It's not going to be bad. It's going to be good. We're just going to get better. We are going to get better and better.
Right. Let's move on to this. Everybody already knows the situations in these cases, so I don't want to talk about them in that context.
Sure.
I wanted to talk about them in the context of you running the Websleuths with your moderators and everything else. And you told me that the 3 milestone cases for Websleuths, since Websleuths, of course, you didn't start owning Websleuths until after JonBenet Ramsey, but the cases that kind of after you became the owner of Websleuths, you told me Jodi Arias, Casey Anthony, and of course, very recently, the murder of Gabby Petito. Those are the 3 that you say have been big. Maybe even this Alex Murdaugh trial is really close, probably that top 3 too, right? Pretty close?
It's up there. It's definitely up there. Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, now, of course, you have, I've covered 280 disappearances in 6.5 years, but of course, Websleuths has thousands of threads on all sorts of different kind of cases, murders, serial killers, maybe even some conspiracy theories and things like that. What makes a popular true crime case, in your opinion? What was it about these 3 compared to many others? What do you think?
I'll tell you, and very rarely will I say I am right about this no matter what, but I'm right about this. It's not the actual crime itself. It is all the surrounding characters that make a true crime case explode. Gabby Petito, look at what you had. You had this video from the police. You know, you have him going home. Gabby's not there. You have his parents not talking to Gabby's parents. All of this horrible things going on behind the scene. Jodi Arias, oh my God. You know, you had Travis's best friend who came on my blog talk show a lot, talking about how they tried to warn about Jodi, and she was just this psycho, crazy woman who did these weird things. And JonBenet, we could go on and on about that.
Right.
Casey Anthony, look at that. Her mother had to call Kaylee Anthony in, and look how Casey was. I mean, she just, everybody couldn't get enough of her because she was so crazy. That's what makes a case explode. Look at Alec Murdaugh. Look at it. You know, I mean, he's got all these deaths around him. He embezzled all this money. He's trying to say that he's innocent. Again, people are looking at that and going, that's crazy. I can't get enough of this. I have to talk about it more. You know, that's what makes a case explode. It's not the actual crime, but it's everything surrounding the crime that people just can't believe is happening. And that's why. It's that simple. It really is.
It's the people, and we don't. We don't want to call them characters because this is real. These things are all too real. Murder, you know, it's all very sad. It's horrible and everything else. But it's the people who are characters, and when I means characters, I mean they're outrageous, they're arrogant, they're loudmouths, they're just they're shameless and whatever else. Those are the things, in your opinion, which makes these cases popular. It's not necessarily how the crimes happened, it's the other things.
Nope. It's all the other things surrounding it because it's so shocking. And one thing I found out too, Ed, is people are good, really. Basically, they're good inside. And so when they see, you know, somebody like Casey Anthony behave like she did, I mean, my God, they can't believe it, and they can't get enough of it. They just can't. And so that's it. That's exactly it. It's the people surrounding and the background story surrounding everything that just makes the case explode. And it'll happen again and again and again. It will always happen. There'll always be somebody out there who commits a crime, who thinks that they're smarter than everybody else, and they'll be able to get away with it. And they're going to have all of these crazy things going on in their life. And then all of the media spotlight and the true crime spotlight will be on them, and they won't get away with it.
Now, here's something. Of course, you know I'm going to ask you this, but what's interesting to me is even how I put it in my notes. It's because this is kind of how we talked about it before. It's, you know, Jodi Arias is a murderer. Casey Anthony is a murderer, but when it comes to it's the murder of Gabby Petito. We don't talk about the guy who was murdered by Jodi Arias, you know, whatever his name was. We don't say the murder of. We suddenly switch and talk about the woman who was involved, even when she is the victim. Do you think that is some sort of subconscious going on there? And of course, you know that at least in the United States, there's this perception that women get more attention when it comes to true crime. And of course, when it comes to true crime, 80% of the audience, the readers and listeners and everything else are women. But do you think there is a skewing that way to the point, even when I write it in my notes, I include the women's names instead of the men's names that are involved in these things, even if they're victims?
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That's interesting. You're absolutely right. And I think it is everything to do with why that particular case exploded. Gabby's case exploded. And again, we don't say Brian Laundrie, but we say Gabby.
Right.
She's the victim.
Yeah.
Hers exploded because of what Brian did to her. Casey Anthony, she's the woman, and what she did was so outrageous to her child that we talk about her.
Right.
And I think that's how you can look at it. And I do think absolutely that women do get more attention because it is a bigger audience. Although I will tell you, men they're catching up. They are catching up. No question, it's happening. And it's going to keep changing, and things are going to keep changing. And it's an unknown future. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's going to be exciting. I do know that.
Well, then let me ask you this before we move on from this section that we're calling these milestone cases. When it does come to men, and a big case involving a man who is a victim, and I know that Jodi Arias, killed her boyfriend, but when you think about, a thread on Websleuths that really, really, really is where the man gets mentioned most, what is that one that you can think of right now?
Oh boy, the one that just pops in. That's a good question.
Not all the questions were going to be easy tonight, Tricia.
I know that's when you said that, two names came to me.
All right.
Travis Alexander, and that's the victim, in Jodi Arias.
Okay.
And the other one was Mark Seaver. Mark Seaver was the murderer of his wife, Tricia Seaver. But he hired his best friend to do it, and he turned on him, and Mark received the death penalty. His best friend went in and beat Tricia to death. She was a doctor. Beat her to death with a hammer. And his name came up because his case was one of the very few cases that we allowed people to suggest that he would be the killer before the police did, because it was so obvious he was. And so his name comes up as, true crime, the Seaver case, Mark Seaver. His name comes up first, and he's the killer.
Okay.
But Travis Alexander, he's the victim. So it just all depends. Again, it's the background. It's what happened, how it got there.
Interesting. I told you, in fact, I even asked you about this because the one that comes to my mind, and this is a disappearance we covered on Unfound, but it was popular well before Unfound came along, was Brian Schaefer.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, who went missing from Columbus, Ohio, and the thing I think everybody who knows about the case knows about it. He goes into this bar, the Ugly Tuna, and seemingly never leaves. They see him walking in on video.
Isn't that weird?
It is, and we're not here to get into that now, but when I think about big, what we would call man or male cases over since you started owning Websleuths in 2004, that's what I think of. I think of Brian Schaefer.
Right.
And I know his thread.
And
I know his thread on Websleuths is very long because I checked it out. But you may be right that those, the other ones you mentioned may be better known. And of course, we don't do murders on Unfound, so I'm not as familiar with murder cases out there. Let's move on to this. Of course, we've talked about the growth. You said that the numbers are important to you and everything. Do you find that now, Websleuths now in 2023, with the amount of users that you have, is it a little overwhelming, or is it still pretty controlled? Do you have it? Do you think that you have a good handle on things? I guess what I'm saying is, if you want more growth, is there room for more growth in the way that you run Websleuths right now?
Absolutely, there is room for more growth, and we want more growth, because more growth means more people on the forum and more people looking at the cases that are not popular. And that's one of our goals, is to help the families get the attention that their cases deserve that they don't get. Now, there are times where it can be overwhelming. Again, Gabby Petito is a great example, and we have to hurry and find volunteers and train them quickly. We'll do that if need be. And I'll jump on there and I'll go on there 24/7, helping with the moderation. We can handle it. No matter what the growth is, we will handle it, because we do want it. We really do.
Okay. As far as design, even me, Unfound has been around 6.5 years, and I love the logo that we have for the podcast. I did not create it, but I love it, or it would not be the logo. But even I, have started a conversation with a couple of my assistants. What do you think about that logo? Does it need a little freshened up? What do we need to do here and there? But, regarding the design of Websleuths, since you started in 2004, is that something you think about? A new logo, a new branding? Have you done that since 2004? Is that something that's also on your mind?
Well, yeah, we did actually. We changed our software in 2015, And the logo, I love the logo. It's just the W, and I love that. I don't think we need to touch that. We do need to freshen up Websleuths and the website because it is hard to follow, and it should be redesigned. Again, it all costs money, and right now it's not on the top of my list. But if we started pulling in a lot of money, that would definitely be something I would look into because it will help. All of that would help, you know. And again, it's just little old me and a few volunteers. And again, I think people get the impression that this is a big corporation, and it's not Reddit. it's just us, and none of us are big, huge, web designers, or we're not into the algorithms and all of that. We just again, we're just trying to do the best we can to help as many people as we can, and to keep true crime honest, because there's so many, we call them bad actors out there now, especially on YouTube, that do horrible things.
Oh yeah.
And we do not do that, and we've got to keep it honest, and we've got to call out the people that aren't,
Now, something I have to admit that I'm not as familiar with regarding your work, Tricia. Of course, I'm all familiar with Websleuths, having been a member for a long time, but you also do a live show. How can people get this? How long have you been doing this? What can you tell the listeners about it?
Well, let me tell you the whole thing. It's on YouTube, and we go live Monday through Saturday at 10:30 Eastern. It's just called Websleuths YouTube Live, and I started it in February of 2020. And I started it for two reasons. Obviously to talk about true crime, but the pandemic was just really kicking in, and people needed to vent. Yeah. And I thought, okay, well, we'll combine the COVID problem, get ideas from people, and true crime, and we'll figure this out, And where I was living at the time, I was living in a cabin, and my internet was really weak. So I could only, I couldn't use any of the programs they had out there, so I couldn't do anything fancy. All I could do was broadcast me. If I had a guest on, it had to be just audio, because I couldn't bring them up on my laptop. It was crazy. But anyway, so I didn't know anything about how to do this or anything. So one day I called two of my friends, and I said, okay, I've made a link to my YouTube channel, but it's on like private or something. So it's just going to be the three of us, and I want to put on makeup, and I need you guys to help me, to tell me how it looks, what shades and things like that, because I want to look fairly okay doing it. So they said, okay. So I sent them the link, and I went live, and I'm talking to them, and all of a sudden, the other people started showing up. I'm like, what the hell? Well, I didn't make it private. I made it public.
Yeah.
And so, like, a YouTube channel was born. I had nothing planned. I was just doing makeup with my friends, and it turned out to be a blast.
Yeah.
We had so much fun. And so what it is actually Monday through Friday is true crime. And then Saturday we do something called Woo Woo Saturday Night, because I'm not necessarily a believer in ghosts and the paranormal.
Me neither.
But I've had some very weird things happen, and I even had a weird thing happen right live on the air, and that became a discussion point, and so people started calling in with their ghost stories. So we decided every Saturday night we do Woo Woo Saturday Night, and it's turned out to be quite the big hit. People love it. So it's true crime and ghost stories on Saturday night. But how it started was, I don't know how even we got started, talking about ghost stories and such. And I had a TV at the cabin, but I hadn't used it actually in years, because I just used my laptop and my phone. And I hadn't turned it on in years. And we were talking about how, sometimes people feel the paranormal has to do with electrical energy and things like that. And I'm sitting there, and we're talking about it, and my TV comes on.
Wow.
And I looked down, and the channel changer was on the ground, way far away from my feet. The animals were, where I could see them all. And it just came on. while we were talking about it. And so I grabbed the channel changer and I hurried and turned it off. And that's when we decided, I think that's when we decided that it would, we'd be talking about this, at least once a week. It was crazy. It was crazy. And we just, had weird things like let that happen. But anyway, so, and what we do is, it's evolved over time. Now, also, one of the reasons that people do live streams on YouTube is to, it's a revenue stream.
Yeah.
And, like we talked about earlier, I don't make a whole lot of money on Websleuths. And there are many times where I don't make enough to pay my bills. So I thought, well, how can I make another revenue stream? And talked to some people, and it looked like, hey, this YouTube idea might be a great idea, and people need to talk with COVID, and we can talk about true crime. So that was another reason I did it. And what I do is we talk about true crime every night. We have guests on all the time, and every day I pick out the latest stories where there's something interesting, and I come on, and people come in my chat room, and we discuss true crime. And sometimes it can be crazy, out of control, or funny, or sad, or whatever, And I've been, like I said, I've been doing it since 2020, and it's grown. I have 29,649 subscribers.
Wow.
And, well, I mean, and in YouTube terms, that's nothing. That is just absolutely nothing. But I'm thrilled. I was thrilled to get 10. And so I'm trying to work up to 50. Then my next goal will be 100,000 subscribers, and that doesn't mean you don't pay anything to be a subscriber. You just click subscribe. But but here's the weird thing about YouTube that makes me crazy. YouTube has these rules that some people have to follow and others don't. They will not run advertising that I get paid for. They will not run it on my channel because I talk about true crime. And whenever whenever I click the button that says run advertising, I get a message from YouTube saying, because of the content, none of the advertisers want to advertise. 99% of the advertisers don't want to advertise. But here's the weird thing. YouTube can still put ads on it, but they won't give me the money. They won't give me the money because I'm violating their rules. So I just turn the ads off. I mean, what's the point?
Tricia, I do a live show too on YouTube, but it's only one night a week on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. And maybe this is something we should talk about probably off air, but I do nothing but true crime. I do kind of the same thing, but just once a week. With news, stuff like the Alex Murdaugh trial or disappearances that have been solved, things like that. And I've never had any problem like that. So,
That's what I don't get. And yet my other friends have the same problem I do. They try and do true crime. Maybe, and maybe it's just my thumbnail, and I don't know. And the thing is, you can't get an answer from anybody on YouTube.
No, nobody works there. Right.
Well, exactly.
Right. Well, we could probably talk. Maybe I can help you with that off air or something. But that's interesting. I have to ask you some more questions, being that I also do a live show. How long did you think it takes you to prepare for that every day? And I also have to ask, being that you were DJ at one time, did kind of your DJ experience kick in as soon as you started doing it, or did you kind of have to get acclimated to it?
Oh, let me tell you, the DJ experience kicked in immediately. I am so glad I had that experience because I was really comfortable talking to people that I can't see. And so thank goodness I had that experience because I don't know what I would have done. So that was great. And I'm sorry, what was the other question?
I want to ask you, how long does it take you to prepare each night, putting news together, news items,
right.
Coming to the microphone, with things to talk about? How long does that take you to prepare?
It can take me, depending on what's going on, it can take me all day, and sometimes it can take me 30 minutes. And there's been times, because I have other things that I need to do during the day, there's been times where I haven't been able to prepare for anything. And I'll pop on and I'll just say, hey, so what's going on in true crime? I've got to be able to ad-lib a lot. And I do that a lot. So it literally literally can be an all-day thing. You know, if I had to average it out, I'd say 2 to 3 hours probably at least every night, just to read through everything and see what I want to use, and you know, see if and thank goodness I have a wonderful executive producer. Her name's Insightful One, and she helps me line up guests. She does so much for me. I don't know what I'd do without her. So again, it's a blast. And I would encourage everybody, because everybody has something to offer. So take whatever it is you love and put it on a YouTube channel. You don't need to show your face. You need to talk. But take something that you love. I know a woman who loves birds, who loves crows. And she has a channel all about crows. And it's fascinating. Take what you love. The internet is such a wonderful thing. Take what you love and put it out there for everybody else. And before you know it, you're doing what you love, and you might be making your living off of it. So it's there for everybody. You just got to pick up and run with it.
Would I be right here on this interview, would I be too brash as to ask to be on your live show at some point?
Oh, I would love you to come on.
Okay.
Absolutely. But I'm
Okay,
going to
great.
tell you, Ed, I'm going to get real personal. I'm going to start and say, Ed, tell us about any federal crimes, and let's go from there, bud.
Okay.
I recognize your picture in the
All right.
topics. That's how we're going to start it.
Okay,
So
great.
just
Well,
be ready.
that's all right. Well, I had to ask. If you have a guest on there, then I have to invite myself on. So we can talk about that off air about how we might be able to make that happen. All right. So everybody knows that you have your YouTube channel like we do. And I know you subscribers. I think our YouTube channel has a little over 15,000, which I'm not displeased with either. You know, it's, yeah, for a podcast, it's pretty good. And so it's on at 10:30 Eastern, Monday through Saturday, and it is the Websleuths YouTube channel?
It's just called Websleuths YouTube Live. Just put in Websleuths and it'll pop up.
All right, spectacular. Everybody, besides going to her website, websleuths.com, please check out the live show that she does, of course, every night, but of course, Monday nights. I have to look out for myself first.
Absolutely, I agree.
Okay.
100%.
Let's move on to this. What's next for Websleuths? You know, what is your, for 2023, do you have a goal, into 2024? What is something that you're working on, something that needs to be changed or updated, something you want to add for the future, in the near future for Websleuths?
Well, other than trying to make more money so I can run it more smoothly and do the updates, that's always something that is there. My goal is every day, every month, every year is to try and get law enforcement to understand that Websleuths is an army of brains just waiting to help them for free. We're not the crazies out there. We're not showing up on people's lawns and yelling through bullhorns and all of that. Law enforcement needs to come into the 21st century, and I want to drag them in kicking and screaming. And let me give you an example. In 2014, I got a call from a detective in Nevada. And this detective said, look, I'm going to give you a piece of evidence that our department has been trying to identify for 23 years. He said it is a T-shirt with an emblem on it, with a picture on it. And it was on a guy who was murdered, but he's not identified. And if we can find out where this T-shirt was made, maybe we can find out who this guy is. And for 23 years, since 1994, this guy, we haven't been able to identify him. He said, I'm going to personally give it to you to put it on Websleuths. He said, but I'm also releasing it to the public. I went, that's great, because I knew our members would just eat it up. So I put it on Websleuths, and for about, I'm going to say 10 days maybe, our members were doing great work. They were working on it, trying to find it, and had all kinds of great ideas. Well, one day this woman comes back from vacation. I have no idea who she is. She looked at it and went, And within 36 hours, she had everything you could ever want to know about this T-shirt. Where it was made, who made it, when it was made, where it's made now, who owned the store where you bought the thread, everything. And think about it, for 23 years, these cops have been trying to find this out, and this woman looks at it, and 36 hours later, she has everything.
Yep.
And they even did a little, he even put out a little press release about it. He was so gracious and so kind. And now, unfortunately, it did not lead to his identity, but what it did was they were able to cross that piece of evidence off. And that's what I've been trying to get out there to law enforcement. Give us that boring, awful piece of evidence that nobody wants. Give it to us. We don't want, we don't want attention. We don't need to announce that we solved anything. Give it to us. Let us work on it to help you. And because Websleuths is heavily moderated, you don't have to worry about the crazies. We'll take care of everything on our end. Give us that evidence. Let us work on it and see what we can do to help you. You would not believe how opposed law enforcement is to any idea like that.
I think after 6.5 years, I certainly would be. Maybe the public might not know that so much, but I personally know, absolutely. I feel for you. I know, yeah.
It's horrible. It is horrible. And, I can count on one hand the times that I have actually called the police and said, I would like you to look at something that one of our members has done on this case that you're working on. And the few times that I've done that, it has never been greeted with a, oh, that's great, thank you so much. It's always been greeted with a, oh my God, we're so busy. But, and I get it. They're right. I'm sure they get crazies calling them all the time. And that's one thing we don't allow at Websleuths. If somebody comes on and said, well, hey, I called the detective in the case, and here's what they said, we immediately remove that and don't allow them to talk about it. Why? Because we don't want everybody else calling that detective and bugging them. That's not what we do. We can't stop what people do, but we can stop them from putting it on the forum. And if they can't talk about it anywhere, then hopefully they won't do it. But see, the police think that's who we are. Another case in point, very good example. There were people that the Anthonys, George and Cindy Anthony, were invited on a cruise to talk about what happened to Casey. It was like a true crime thing. This was years and years ago. Well, so many people protested that they canceled them, and they blamed it on Websleuths.
Wow.
And I said, I didn't even know about it. And nowhere on our forum does it say anything. And I said, and we would never encourage that, but we got blamed. Same thing happened when people went outside the Anthony house and started yelling and screaming at George and Cindy. We got blamed. Websleuths personally got blamed. And I said, we did just the opposite. And I showed people, look, we said, don't you dare go to the Anthonys, stay away. Websleuths has nothing to do with this, but we get blamed. And one other quick story, and it's the worst one ever. There was that Netflix special about the woman that went missing from, what was her name? Lisa Lamb. She went missing from the hotel.
Yeah, of course. And where there was a video of her on the elevator and everything.
Right.
Yeah, she was eventually found in the water tank. Yes.
Right, exactly.
Elisa Lamb,
There was this guy, and I think his name was, with an M, I want to say, God, I can't remember. I want to say Mortimer, but that's not it. I can't remember. Anyway, this guy, for some reason, people latched onto him. And we talked about the Lisa Lamb case on our forum for many years, right, when it first happened.
Sure.
And again, because of the video, that's what caused the interest in the case. So anyway, this guy, he went by one name, and I can't remember the name, but anyway, what happened was people decided he was the killer.
Yeah.
He killed Lisa Lamb, and they followed him, like, to Mexico, and they made his life miserable. And I went, and this was all on the Netflix special. So I go back and I look on Websleuths, and he was mentioned a couple of times. The context was, this guy didn't do anything. Do not bring up his name again. Don't discuss him because he had nothing to do with this. The Netflix special called the people that harassed this man and, quote, ruined his life, unquote, Websleuths. And now they didn't differentiate that it was a little W-E-B space sleuth to the capital W-E-B-S-L-E-U-T-H-S, but people didn't know that. So guess who got blamed? You should have seen the nasty messages I got, and I wrote to Netflix. I said, you have to correct this. I said, you're saying Websleuths, but it's not. People think it's us. And
You're saying the generic web sleuths in contrast to the business capital W web sleuths.
Exactly. And I said, you even go on our website, you will see that we did not even, we told people not to talk about him. And they wouldn't change it. So we just had to do this big campaign where whenever anybody said anything on Twitter or anywhere about web sleuths harassing people, we had to go in and, make sure that they knew that it was the generic web sleuths and not the trademarked web sleuths. So, we get a bad rap no matter what. And the thing is, what we could do for the police department, when I say we, I mean our members, it would save them money. It would help them, And again, we handle the discussion. They don't have to worry about it, but I can't get them to listen.
This Alyssa Lamb issue is the second time this is. Of course, I don't cover murders or deaths, where bodies are found, whatever people think happened to Alyssa Lamb, but this is actually the second time that's come up because do you know John Lorden? Do you know who he is?
Oh, very well. Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
well,
absolutely.
I know him too. We've worked together a couple times on some things. And, he got caught up in the middle of that Alyssa Lamb stuff too. Because he helped out that Netflix special and when it came out and they were pointing the finger at that guy, I mean, he got all sorts of backlash. In fact, I interviewed him for a special Thanksgiving episode in 2021, and we actually talked about that and how it was such a big mess. And John had to come out and do a special episode, saying that, this is not what I intended. That was totally on the producers of what they did. I had nothing to do with this. Yeah, big mess.
And he helped. He actually contacted me and said, I want to help you clear this up.
Yeah.
He saw what had happened.
Right.
And so I was so great. He is such a great guy.
He is.
He really is. He's an amazing man.
Yeah.
So it's again, we call them the bad actors, and there's a lot of them out there, and they make a lot of money, especially on YouTube, by doing these crazy antics that just hurt everybody. Yeah. But they make all the money. I don't get it. I'll never understand it.
But what you're saying is one of your goals, big goals, is having a better communication and more understanding and more collaboration between web sleuths and law enforcement, and getting them to understand that you're here to help and they can actually use your site as a resource.
Exactly. Now they read here all the time. Again, they won't admit it. And once in a great while, I'll get a subpoena. Hasn't happened for several years, but I'll get a subpoena saying, we need everything you have on this particular member. And I'll call and I'll say, why? And as far as he'll go, they'll say, this person posted information that only the killer would have. Mm-hmm. And all we have on our members is an IP address and their email. And if I get a law enforcement subpoena, I will turn over that information, but that's the only time I'll turn it over. Mm-hmm. So,
Okay.
But like I said, they read here all the time. So why not just reach out? Just reach out. I won't say anything. I won't even say we're trying to help the police. I'll just put something up and see what happens, Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's very frustrating. So that's my main goals is to try and get it to be a better producing website so I can survive. And then to see that if law enforcement uses us, we can help, and that helps everybody. It helps the victims, it helps the family, and it helps law enforcement,
Let's move.
Cost them a thing.
Yeah, let's move on to some discussion points. So just true crime topics in general, and then we will wrap this all up. And maybe that is a good way to segue into this. And very quickly, we'll just go through each of these topics. But I'll give you an experience that I had the beginning of last year, and once again, it has to do with law enforcement, that I was looking into a disappearance of 1993. I was able to track down an investigator who was not the original investigator for the disappearance, but one who was responsible for it later. And he had just retired, I'm thinking in 2019 or 2020 or something like that. And I was able to track him down and, trying to get a feel for when he became responsible for it. And of course, this disappearance, unfortunately, is still unsolved. It became very obvious to me that here he was, he just retired, but he talked about computers as if he was talking about the Model T or something. No understanding of
social media and podcasting or anything else. This is somebody who just retired from law enforcement, you know. So do you think, of course, this guy was probably into his 60s. Do you see this changing, of course, with younger officers who maybe were brought up, taught computers in school or something? You know, is this an issue? You know, what do you think about that? Is this something that's eventually going to pass? And being you're talking about law enforcement, maybe seeing the true crime community as not being in league with them, is it really like a technological thing? Is it a pride thing? What do you think it is?
I think it's both. And I do think that eventually the officers that are hired for law enforcement will have grown up with the internet and with discussion forums and Twitter and all of that, and they'll understand it, and it might be a little easier. But it's interesting that you mentioned, you know, his age, 64, 65. Well, that's how old I am, you know? And I figured it out. And believe me, I am so not technologically good at anything. But I think they get stuck in their ways, and they don't want it. They don't like change, and their pride is everything. Think about how some of the law enforcement that you've dealt with, if a woman that, you know, was stuck in a wheelchair was able to figure out a case that they've been working on forever.
Right.
My God, it would kill them, you know, if they just would deny it. And I think that's a big problem. And there are not all police officers, obviously, but a lot of them. You know, we get accused of being little old ladies. In fact, John Ramsey called us, what do they call us? Beer can collecting housewives.
That's
and
nice.
So we wear that with pride.
That's
you know?
productive.
It's like, oh, yeah, I mean, he's such a jerk. But anyway, and I think law enforcement looks at us as little old biddies that interfere. And what they don't know is we're not little old biddies. There's a lot of really strong, young, middle-aged, and older women and men who are smart, that have had, you know, careers as scientists and lawyers and doctors that are into this as well. You know, we're not Jessica Fletcher from Murder, She Wrote. You know, we're sitting here applying our best brain power to this and having a discussion with other people from all around the world about a case that maybe won't have any publicity at all. And you would think that they would like that, but for some reason, and I do think that's a great point. I think as more and more of these law enforcement people retire, and the new crop of younger people that grow up, that this is all a part of their life, that will make a big change.
Okay.
It's got to. But they've got to get over this attitude, man. They just got to get over this attitude that we want to interfere and we want to cause problems and we want glory, and that's not it at all. Not even close.
Let's move on to this, though. Let's get away from law enforcement. I'm sure you're also aware, though, out in the academia, the rest of the media, a lot of articles have been written over, like, maybe since true crime, maybe not before true crime podcasting got started, but since it got started, this whole thing of turning people's tragedies into entertainment. Has the true crime community earned that? Is that true? Are these people in a way correct? Because there's a lot of articles you can find that are being written all the time, and I've once in a while on my live show talk about them. What do you think about that? Has the true crime community kind of earned that, truthfully?
Absolutely. Not all true crime creators have earned that, but it's because of the crazies out there. Now, there are podcasters that have done incredible work, that are excellent, that have created a situation where law enforcement absolutely has to look at their evidence and has to do something. And those people should be commended, and they should be, just thanked tremendously. Alex Murdaugh, that case, there is a podcast, and I think it's called the Murdaugh Murders. My God, the work they did was unbelievable. And of course, the other one slipped my mind. But you know, people will say, well, look, they're making money off of this. Well, you know what? So are the newspapers where they're writing that opinion. And so are the people on TV and other platforms. It's the news of the day, okay? And so what the responsible podcasters and responsible true crime people are doing is they are discussing and bringing up the evidence and trying to see what went wrong and what happened. And yeah, they do make money, but they have to make a living. But they're doing something good. Just like Nancy Grace has to make a living. Just like, the people on CNN, they have to make a living. It's the exact same thing. However, we answer only to ourselves usually, and of course to the people that we want to watch our podcast. But we absolutely have earned that reputation of interfering and causing problems and not respecting. And when I say we, I'm talking about, like I mentioned earlier, the bad actors, the one that go out, they go out there and they cause those problems. And I don't know how to stop them. I'm just hoping they'll eventually fade out just because they're just horrible, awful people. And unfortunately, we're associated with them. And until they go away, we always will be. We just have to keep pounding in that message. We are not like them. We want to help. We want to talk about the case. We don't want to make things up. We don't want to hurt people. And I'm telling you, there are so many great podcasts out there that have done amazing things to help move cases along. And those are the ones we should be looking at, not these crazy people.
What do you think, being that you have of course, like you said, 250,000 people, users or members of Websleuths and everything. What do you think it is, though? We're talking about probably some people who are even listening to our interview right now. People are drawn, though, to that sensationalism, to those people who really exaggerate things. The person that comes to my mind is David Paulides, but we could pick out a lot of them. They're just saying things for attention and everything. Is there anything that we can say to our audiences, or anything you can say to your users at Websleuths to tell them, probably some of these other things that you're partaking in, reading or listening to, watching, are not good? How do we go about doing that? Because those people, we can't say that that audience for these sensationalists are any different from our audience. It's probably some of the one and the same. They're listening to a lot of difference.
Exactly. But I talk about it all the time on my live stream, and I'll call them out by name, and I've done that. There's been some horrible drama that I've had to go through because I was involved with helping one of these bad actors who I thought was a good guy, and he wasn't. And I made an apology, and I showed the truth, and I felt was the right thing. But here's what we can do, Ed. We just have to remind people, when you see somebody lying, hurting a family, like in the Kylie Rodney case, where the people were saying, her parents were actors, and they didn't. Kylie Rodney wasn't real, and this is just all a false flag and a bunch of crap like that. When you see other podcasters doing things like that, call them out by name and just say, listen, if you're listening to my podcast, let me tell you, this other person, they're doing horrible things to the family. Doesn't matter what they do to you or me, they're hurting the family of the victim. And if you don't want to hurt the family of the victim, then don't watch them. Don't donate to them. Stick to the podcasts that have the facts and are not sensationalizing them. And what I have found is, a lot of these people may have, 100,000 subscribers. They're slowly starting to lose. And it's going to take a long time to get it to where this type of sensationalism is going to go away. What would really help is if YouTube would actually enforce their rules, but they don't. And you can sit there and complain till the cows come home. It doesn't matter. They'll violate all kinds of rules, and they're still up there.
Yeah.
There was one guy's channel that was taken down that should have been taken down because he pointed to an innocent man as being Brian Laundrie and told everybody that he was talking with Brian Laundrie, and it's this guy, gave the guy's real name, everything. And of course, it turned out it wasn't Brian Laundrie. That guy lost his YouTube channel. And guess what? He got it back. He never should have gotten it back after pulling a stunt like that. After taking an innocent man out of his private life and making him the most wanted and hated man in America, he should have lost his YouTube privileges forever, but he didn't. Same thing with podcasters. When they do something sensational like that hurts people, for God's sakes, they supposedly have terms of service. All of the platforms do.
Allegedly.
But they don't enforce them. So all we can do is pressure the platforms to enforce their rules and to let the people that listen to us, the people that trust us, tell them, point them out, but be damn sure what you're saying is correct. Okay? If somebody is lying and causing a problem for the family, let them know, because people don't know. They don't know all the drama that goes on. They're just listening to some guy who's telling them these crazy, wild things, and they're just fascinated because it would never occur to them that somebody would lie like that. And it's up to us to educate them that, yeah, they will lie like that. But you got to be very careful. You got to make sure that what you're telling them is provable, black and white, and that way you're protected all the way.
Let me give you an example. This comes to mind, but I'm sure it came up on Websleuths. And I'm bringing this up because it's well known in a lot of people's minds, all the controversy around it, but it is true crime. And that was the Sandy Hook shooting. And we know because of Alex Jones and all of that it was a false flag operation. It didn't, how did you handle that at Websleuths? Because I'm sure that was a thread there, but there were so many people buying into that. At some point, have you ever had to like shut a thread down because it's a real, happening, true crime happening, but everybody coming in there is spewing all these crazy thoughts. You just said, we can't do this, and just shut it down.
Here's what we do. Anybody dares come in and do something like that, like on a Sandy Hook, that makes my head explode. And either I'll do it or I'll instruct the mods to do it. They're banned for good. And if anybody brings it up, they're banned. We don't tolerate that. Just talking about it makes me crazy. We don't tolerate that for 1 second because it's baloney and it hurts people. And how dare they do this? And how dare they use my platform to hurt a family and spew a bunch of lies that are absolutely just crazy lies. We don't allow it for 1 second. It gets shut down so fast that nobody ever knows it was even on Websleuths. And that's what I want is our reputation. We so will not put up with this, and nobody gets to spread any of that crap on Websleuths ever.
Okay, let's move on to this. Maybe one or two more topics. Have you ever gone? People know my attitude toward CrimeCon, but have you ever gone to CrimeCon? Your experience? What can you say about it?
Let me tell you. When the first year of CrimeCon, they contacted me, and they said, "Would you help us advertise it?" And they said, "And we'd like you to come." And this is when I was doing my, I think, was it Blog Talk Radio? I can't remember. It was one of my, I don't think it was Blog Talk. I can't remember what I was doing, but they wanted me to come to my podcast. I can't remember where I was doing it. To have a room set up and people could come watch. And they said, "Could you advertise it for us? And then we'll pay for your room and your transportation." I said, "That would be great." Well, I went there. I had a blast. It was really good the first year. The second year, they acted like they didn't know who I was. They didn't want anything to do with me. They didn't want Websleuths' help in any way because they didn't need it. And the second year, I went to the second one, and it was horrible. It was in like this Grand Ole Opry new hotel where you had to walk 1,000,000 miles, and oh my God, it was so expensive. And then I quit going. And then last year, my wonderful, I call them the mad chatters, my wonderful people in chat raised money so I could go to last year's. And I actually had fun there, but John Ramsey was there. And that's why I wanted to go, because he had a question and answer period. And by God, I was going to ask him a question. I got to ask him 2 questions, and he lied both times, of course. But
just so we're clear, that's JonBenet Ramsey's father.
Yeah, JonBenet Ramsey's
all right, just
father.
to be clear. Okay.
Right, and he's got books he's peddling and a bunch of baloney. But anyway, it's so expensive, and I get why people want to go, and a lot of my friends are like, they're speakers there, and they offer really interesting things. But it's so expensive, it's prohibitive for most people, and I find that sad. I really do. So what was your experience?
I've never gone, and I never will go, because I will be honest with you, I think that it only furthers the sensationalism of what I think the perception is of true crime. There's too much going there. I want to hobnob and get my picture taken with Nancy Grace and things like that. And then you look at the company who actually puts it all together, they don't give a dang about true crime. They're an entertainment company. And the very second that convention doesn't make money, they'll close it up. So it is more geared toward entertainment than it is toward problem solving and everything else. So you will never see me there. I've told my audience over and over,
You know what?
I'm not going.
And I understand that. I do. I just see it a little bit differently because I know a lot of the speakers that go there, and they're really great people that do a lot of pro bono work for people, and they like showing people what they do and how they go about it. You know, but I understand that. I absolutely do understand it. It is a party atmosphere, I'll admit. It really is. And you're right. As soon as it stops making money, they'll stop. But I don't see that happening anytime in the future at all.
I suppose not. But the thing is, then we have to ask ourselves for what the topics are and the reason that everybody's coming together. Should it be a party atmosphere? Are we supposed to be all happy and having a good time when the only reason everybody is there is because a bunch of crimes have been committed and they're still unsolved and everything? It just really challenges my ethics quite a bit. And so,
and I understand that.
You know, I'm not going.
Let me just tell you one thing. There are a lot of families at CrimeCon that are able to get the information out about their loved ones. In fact, Abby and Libby's families from the Delphi murders, they went every year, and since the murders happened, and they've worked really hard to get their information out. So it is a good platform for that. But I understand what you're saying. I do. I absolutely do.
One more topic. Maybe this goes back to law enforcement. In general, do you think that law enforcement takes seriously, you know, as much work as you've been putting in it since 2004, even before that, me since 2016, you know, and as seriously as we both take the work that we do you think that law enforcement takes seriously what we do?
No. If they do, they won't admit it. And there might be the rare occasion. Well, let me take it back. Okay. I'm talking about boots on the ground law enforcement, detectives, you know, patrol people, all of that. There are people that are wonderful that love what we do, like Joseph Scott Morgan. He's a death investigator, and he's amazing. Cheryl McCollum, another person in law enforcement that loves what we do and understands it. Those type of people, absolutely. But the regular day-to-day law enforcement people working the cases, I don't think they see what we have to offer in any way, shape, or form. At least the majority don't. I think the majority view us as problematic because they associate those awful people that show up on victims' lawns yelling at them. They think that's who we are. And we're not like that. And it's up to us to try and get through their heads that we are not like that. Again, dragging them into the 21st century. They can get a lot of good from us, from people like you, Ed, that work hard and stick to the truth, you know, and that's, believe me, that is incredible, and I commend you for doing that.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
You don't, and you don't sensationalize things to make your platform bigger or to make more money. You're doing the right thing, and that's how most of these people are. But unfortunately, the ones that are more popular and make more money are these ones that are horrible people, and that's who the police think we are. And so it's going to take a while for us to get through their heads that we are not these people. And I do believe these people, eventually, something will happen. I don't know what that something is, but I can feel it in my gut. Something's going to happen that is going to get these people and get them to stop. What that is, I don't know. It'll happen. It's just going to take a while.
Is it almost like this paradoxical thing where the true crime community might have a bigger impact and taken more seriously if the community and the popularity of true crime was smaller? Because, of course, as you know, what happens is because the general public knows how popular the genre of true crime is, whatever that term means to you, that then brings in more opportunists.
Oh, absolutely. If we were smaller and not as popular, I don't think we'd have any problem. No problem whatsoever. But
Yeah.
true crime has always been huge. Every step of the way, from Vincent Bugliosi's book about Charles Manson to Anne Rule to Lifetime, television for women about true crime, women killing their husbands, to the internet, to what we see now. Every step of the way, true crime has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and it shows no signs of slowing down. That's why it's so important to keep the good people going that stick to the facts and want to do the right thing. It's believe me, it's a fight every day. But we're going to win it, because I really believe, as corny as this sounds, that good and the truth will win out eventually, and we will. These people will stop. Law enforcement will see that we can help them, and then see how quickly crimes can get solved. It will be exciting when it does happen.
I'm thinking of another book that comes to mind. You've mentioned, of course, the Charles Manson and Anne Rule. I'm also thinking about, and it's one of my favorite movies, but I can't think of the guy's name right now. But the guy who wrote the book on the Zodiac Killer. That was a huge, popular, of course, the movie with Robert Downey Jr. and Jake Gyllenhaal, or however you say his name, and the coverage of the investigation of the Zodiac Killer in San Francisco in the area in the 1970s. Spectacular movie by David Fincher. But that also was a very popular book when it came out, and I don't, some people said maybe there's a lot of inaccuracies and things in it, but that obviously has driven, back at that time, driven the interest forward as well.
Exactly, and here's the thing about a book like that. There may be inaccuracies in it, but maybe at the time that he wrote it, he didn't know it was inaccurate, or it didn't seem inaccurate. Things change, and you got to take a look at that too. You got to look at the intent. And just the little bit I know about the book, I think the intent was pure, was to try and really find a killer. And again, just made true crime even more popular. And now people can look at evidence and figure it out. It's just amazing what we can do. We could just get law enforcement to see it too.
One more question, and then we will end this interview. And I get to ask you this because, of course, I'm a guy, which means I am in the minority of the audience out there. What draws so many women to true crime?
I get asked that question a lot, and there's a couple of things. I just think it's more in our nature to look at a crime and be so shocked and appalled that we want to do something, and even if that something is calling our friends and saying, oh my gosh, did you see this? And they said this, don't you think they're lying? And on and on. I think it's more in our nature to want to go deep into a crime that we find appalling and to somehow fix it, because we're fixers. Now, there's nothing we can do to fix it, but I do think that's our nature. And it's an emotional thing. It's very emotional. And guys are not as emotional. They don't show their emotions as much. They're not going to call their guy friends and say, oh my gosh, did you see what happened in the Ramsey case today? Oh, God.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
It's just not going to happen, But we're seeing more and more men on Websleuths. Granted, it's like, I think it's either 60-40 or 70-30 women to men, but it's growing. Men are getting more and more involved. But I think it's just who we are. We're women. We get involved. We like to talk to our friends about it. We like to fix things, and we want to make it right.
Do you think it's also because of course, we have to remember on the earth, women in general are smaller than men, and so they're generally physically weaker than men, and so maybe it's more on their mind of how dangerous the world can be, whereas guys, we just don't think of things like that. We think of bar fights as maybe being a positive, not a negative. Could it be that women realize that they're on a world where 50% of the species is bigger and stronger than them, and so they're more drawn to these types of things because that's the kind of world they live in?
In my opinion, I don't think it's that. I think it could be because we recognize that women are in more danger because of men, because if a woman breaks up with a man, that is, if they're going to be murdered, that's the most likely time. A pregnant wife think the number one cause of death is murder. I think it's number one.
Yep.
And so I think it's more that. I think it's because we're aware that we are in danger because of the men that we have chosen, which we have to be a lot more careful about the men that we choose. I mean, really, oh God, I could go on and on about that. It makes me crazy.
Sure.
But that's what I think it is. I just think we realize that we're in danger, and we are more likely to be murdered by a man than in an emotional type situation than any other time. So I think that's what it is, in my opinion.
Okay, very good. And I'm not going to try to mansplain. That's why I asked you. I just have an opinion, but we'll go with your answer. But it's my job as the host to answer or ask such questions. Okay. At this point, why don't you tell everybody, of course, it's Websleuths.com, but why don't you tell everybody everywhere else that you are, and why don't you remind them of the live show again? So if you have a Twitter account, Facebook page, all those things, TikTok, whatever else, why don't you tell the listeners about all of the other stuff besides the website right now?
Absolutely. Our Twitter account is shockingly Websleuths. Our Facebook page is Websleuths. Our Instagram page is Websleuths. Now, my friend actually handles Instagram, and our social media is lacking terribly, and we're trying to get that kicked up. Also, we are going to be putting together a TikTok channel, and we have a Patreon channel that we're going to reactivate as well. All of those things will be found under Websleuths. And finally, you go to websleuths.com. It's free to register. We just need your email to register, an active email. And if you want to see the live stream, we're on every night, Monday through Saturday at 10:30 Eastern. You just type in Websleuths on YouTube, and we will pop up. Our logo is a black and white W. It's very easy to spot. And Ed, you've been wonderful. I really appreciate it. We will definitely have you on our live stream. Okay?
Great. I can't wait. Now we get to turn the tables, and you get to ask all the questions, and I get to look for the answers off the top of my head. That'd be fun. I appreciate it, and thank you for allowing me to invite myself onto your live show.
I'm delighted.
Okay, you're welcome. Any final words before we complete this interview, Tricia?
Yes, everybody, please get involved. Say something. If you see a child that looks like there's something wrong, say something. If one of your friends is in a relationship that you're worried about, say something. Offer to help, but especially with the children. If we can intercept kids that might be being abused and help them, we can really make a difference in our society. And come to Websleuths. It's a community. You are welcome. What you have to offer is what we want. You just have to follow our rules and know that you are wanted. That's how I'd like everybody to think of Websleuths.
Tricia, thank you for being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you, Ed. We'll talk soon.
You're welcome, and I hope so.
And that was my March 8th and 9th, 2023 interview. Yes, we did that over 2 evenings with Tricia Griffith, owner and operator of Websleuths.com since 2004. I thank her for joining me and all of you on this episode. I also need to thank Assistant Cherie for making it happen. There are several topics that stick with me from this interview, but I will narrow it to 3 for this summation. First, I'm reminded of when I interviewed my good friend Megan Lyonez, at the time last name Good, way back in late 2016 about her website, charlieproject.org. I went in thinking that it was run by a large group of people, a very expansive organization, whereas what I and everyone found out from the interview is Megan runs it herself. Well, Tricia doesn't do everything at Websleuths on her own. However, how surprised were you to hear that only 4 moderators watch over all the threads and forums there? That is crazy. I give those volunteers all the credit in the world. I bet they have some stories. Second, I want you to take to heart what Tricia said about how despite Websleuths' popularity, she is not rolling in the cash. This is a topic that is always going to be a sore spot for me, and Tricia said it in the interview herself. How is it that so many charlatans can come into the true crime world, or at the very least, people who use others' horrible incidents and circumstances as the punchlines for jokes, or they just blatantly rip off Unfound and other legitimate podcasts and then get deals from Amazon and Netflix or wherever, while someone like Tricia, who has been doing her serious work for almost 20 years, gets no big-time offers at all. The only way this is going to change is if all of you stop tuning into those shows, channels, and series that amount to nothing more than clickbait. Third and last, the walls that law enforcement has built up against good true crime reporters and researchers and investigators has to be brought down. You've heard me say it, and now you've heard Tricia say it. There is a stigma. Do I think the true crime community has earned some of its surly reputation? Of course. But I would also say that law enforcement's aversion to take help from part of the public that really knows a topic like disappearances or murders or forensics or whatever else, and has made it their life's work, even more than the police officers themselves, that attitude only helps the criminals. Even myself, you will not find a person who is more knowledgeable and serious about disappearances in this universe. Yet, I've been blown off by 2 law enforcement organizations over the past month that claim they're looking for consultants. This has to change, not just for me, but for Tricia and everyone else who treats the topic of true crime in a moral, ethical, and legal way. So I hope you enjoyed this look behind the curtain at Websleuths, a website 99% of you have surely visited at least once. There's no theorizing to be done this week. And that's the program. Right now, while you are in your podcast platform, Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, wherever, give Unfound a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever that platform allows. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've just finished this episode of Unfound.